This is the CC Radio Podcast. Welcome to the show, everyone. You are listening to Believe, Australian Paranormal and UFO Radio. My name is Cade Moyer, and thanks for tuning in. If you've had an encounter, get in touch with me. My email address is believe@ccradio.com.au, or you can message me on Facebook at facebook.com/Believe UFO Radio. If you enjoy this episode, there are a few things you can do to help the show. Firstly, you can go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and review. Or you can share the show around social media with your friends and family, and that would help us grow. Welcome back to another episode of Believe. I'm your host, Cade Moyer, and tonight I have Dan joining us, and Dan has had a couple of really interesting Min light experiences. Now, I say that as a bit of a guess because we kind of work out what his experiences were as we kind of go through the interview. So sit back and enjoy that one. But before we get into it, I have a pretty big announcement that's going to require a little bit of input from the listeners. So we are going to move this show to a weekly format. So what that means is I need you guys to really share this podcast around. That means we can get more listeners, and most importantly, that means we can get more guests, because without the guests, this podcast really wouldn't happen. So I need you guys to help me out. Share it with everyone, absolutely everyone that you can, and that will really help us out a lot. And just before we get into the episode, I want to read out 2 more reviews. Now, if you leave me a 5-star review on iTunes, there's a chance that I'm going to read it out on the next episode. So tonight's reviews that I'm reading out come from Wasteland Salk 08, and he says, sensationally spooky. This show is amazing, and the host Cade has a voice that adds to the scare factor. Definitely a podcast that should feature in everyone's list. Thank you, Wasteland Salk from Australia. And the next one comes from TV Comic Geek from Australia as well. Chills. Wow, this podcast gave me chills. I can't wait for more episodes. So if you guys want your review read out live on the show, be sure to jump on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Now, let's get into Dan's experience. Tonight, I want to welcome Dan to the show, and Dan has actually had a couple of light experiences that he thinks may be some Min lights. Dan, welcome.
G'day, Cade. How are you?
Very good, mate. It's good to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, mate. My pleasure.
You have a fair few experiences to tell us about. Do you mind kind of going back to the start and telling us about the first one that you've had?
Yeah, sure. The first experience I had was really back in 2003, I want to say 2004. I had a friend who lived not far from where I live here on the mid-North Coast, New South Wales. He lived out on a property that is quite hilly, fairly remote, up a dirt road. It has a lot of trees on it, a little bit of a clearing in the front, and then like a big hill up the back. And he used to always say to me, "Oh, there's people walking around with lights up there. You know, I see all these white lights up in the bush. I think there's people walking around." I'm like, "No, you know, you're out in the middle of nowhere, mate. There's no one walking around out there. His nearest neighbour was over 3 k's away, and all that type of thing." So we went out there one night just to see if we could see these things, and nothing happened. So we called it quits and went back home, and about 2 weeks later we went out there again, not to look for the lights, but we were outside. A friend, myself, my friend, and another friend of ours was there, and we just happened to look up into the hill, and what do we see? All these not little lights, but these white lights dancing around in the bush. We thought, oh, maybe fireflies? No, they don't. They're not around there. They don't. we've never seen fireflies around here or anything like that. And these were quite large. These weren't like a little dot and didn't flicker. These were quite solid, large balls of light, say beach ball or basketball to beach ball size, and they wouldn't flicker off or on. They would just dim down a little bit and then get really bright, and then they'd just disappear. So that was the first encounter of what I thought were my initial thoughts were Min lights. I'd heard about them as a kid years ago, and I'd always thought they were only specifically out in outback desert sort of areas, but I could be wrong.
How far away were you from these lights?
We were about 150 to 200 metres away.
Okay, and from that distance away, they still look like beach balls.
Yeah, they weren't small at all. They were big. That's why I say they weren't fireflies. You know, I have seen fireflies before, and these didn't look anything like those at all. So they were quite big. They were decent size. Yeah. Yeah,
right. So I guess in theory, like if you're a little bit closer to these would have been quite large. Because if it had at a distance that you were, and they're the size of beach balls, I mean, if we're going on a perspective basis here, they could have been the size of a car or something like that.
They could have been. They could have been quite large. I've never really thought about it in that perspective. But yeah, we were just amazed that they were there. We actually, to tell you the truth, we didn't believe our friend. We thought, no, you know, who knows what he's up to, what he's seeing. But then when we've seen them, we were amazed, and we're like, yep, that's definitely not someone creeping around. There's something else up there. And look, he sold the property not too long after that anyway. He wasn't too happy with it. So
yeah, right. So he felt really uncomfortable with those on his property.
He felt uncomfortable with it. For me, I didn't get a feeling of anxiousness or anything like that from them. I was just amazed that they were there. You know, it was like a phenomenon sort of thing.
Yeah, of course. And did they make any noises or anything like that, or were they just kind of a silent light?
Definitely silent. Definitely no noise whatsoever from them, and they were silent. We literally didn't see like it, and he sold the property probably about 3 or 4 months after that, and we used to go out there quite a bit because we were close friends, and I didn't see them again there after that, and he said he'd seen them there a couple of times, but they slowed right down after the three of us seen them together. Yeah,
right. And was it a common occurrence for that property, for those lights to show up?
Yes, apparently so. He used to see them all the time. He lived there by himself for a long time, and this property is out the back of nowhere, sort of thing. You know, it's you had to have a 4-wheel drive to get to it, so it wasn't inaccessible, but a 2-wheel drive car would have difficulties to get there. You know, so there was no people around, so it couldn't have been people with like really bright flashlights or anything like this. And there was no noise. You couldn't hear sticks breaking or people walking through the bush or anything like that. So
yeah, okay. And when you saw these lights, were they moving around or anything? Were they kind of floating through the trees, or they weren't?
They were like dancing around. They were sort of not like a fly would jump around erratically, but sort of dancing with each other, sort of thing, on I want to say like a figure 8 type of motion.
Okay, so they were almost playing with each other.
Yeah, it looked like it. Yeah, and we were amazed. We just stood there. Both my friend that was there with me, and the friend that owned the property. Just we looked at each other and we're like, okay, he's not giving us a run around anymore. He's not BSing us. He's feeding him.
Yeah, wow. And he moved out after this?
Yeah, not long after that, about 3-4 months after that, he had enough and he wanted to get out. He didn't know what they were, didn't feel comfortable, anything like that. So he shot through, but that's fine. That's his choice.
And that's you can't really blame him for that, really, if you have these lights that are floating around your property and you don't know what they are.
And it wasn't just for like a couple of days, you know. It had been going on for 6 to 8 months. You know, so.
Yeah, that's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, and I could see, in his perspective, I can see why he would feel anxious and nervous about it. You know, I think that someone's watching him and all this type of thing, even though I don't think it was someone. I think it was just, I don't know how to explain min lights, what they are, if they're spirits or what they are, so.
Did he have any reports, did he ever tell you that the lights came closer to his property or maybe around the house?
No, they were always up in the hill. They were always up on the hill.
Did he ever go up that way to see if there was anything up there that might be causing it?
Yep, we did up one night. The 2 weeks before we actually seen the lights. We set up a sting operation, so to speak, where we thought, well, I'm about the same. I was about the same build as him. He came over to my house. We jumped in his car. We drove back to his house. He plays the drums. I play the drums. I pretended to be him, basically. And I dropped him off about a K before we got to his property. He scooted up through the bush to try and find people, to see if there was anyone creeping around his property. And I played him coming home, feeding the dogs, playing the drums, cooking dinner and whatnot, and nothing. Didn't find anything.
That's disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, it took us a day to set this thing up, He came over to my house in the afternoon. He's like, right, this is what we're going to do. And we didn't see anything. And then 2 weeks later, we go out there just as a visit with another friend and we see everything.
Oh, it's just the luck, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. So that was the first time I'd seen them. And that was about, as I said, about 203, 204, something like that. As I said, he lived approximately 15 minutes away from where I'm located. Now, I'm located on the North Coast of mid-North Coast of New South Wales, and I have 880 hectares of Aboriginal reserve next to my property. I'm on just a little hobby farm, 15 acres. And we've seen some interesting lights around here too. I've seen red orbs. I've seen white orbs. A friend of mine last year who came over from America, a very spiritual lady called Adonna, who does star ancestry readings, like finds out where your original incarnation was from and that type of thing. She seen 3 lights in the bush one night. She got up one night to go to the bathroom and she was looking out the window and she said there were 3 lights dancing around in the bush. They were white. They were doing, she described them pretty much exactly how I described the ones that I seen up at my friend's place. She said that was like they were dancing around each other and playing around, and she said they were about around basketball size. We're about, from the bush to the house is about 30 metres. So she got quite a good view of them.
That definitely sounds like Min lights, that behaviour.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And as soon as she told me, I said, "Oh, the Min lights," and she said, "Well, what are Min lights?" And I told her what I thought they were, which is, they're an Aboriginal thing that, they're generally out in the desert. And this is where as I said in my message to you when I contacted you, I'm not sure if Min lights are specifically for that area or they can be anywhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's pretty common to have Min lights in Queensland, and to be honest, I haven't heard of Min lights really being anywhere else, but that's really not to say that Min lights can't be anywhere else. I hear encounters from people all the time who have counted lights all the way down the New South Wales coast. And just because they haven't got the Min light, I guess, label attached to them,
tag, doesn't
mean that I guess they're not Min lights.
Yeah, well, because we've seen a lot of like orange orbs and red orbs like that come up. They look like they come up. I seen one. It's about I'd say 6 months ago. So I've got I work at home on a glass blower, and I was going down to my studio to do some to set the kiln up. I think it was, yeah. And I look up and here's this white orb just come up from pretty much the bush at the back of the property. And I called out to my wife to say, oh, have a look at this. There's another one. And she said, she's turned around to me and she said, oh, no, this one over here, have a look at this one. So she'd seen one come up from the bush over the other side of the property, and I've seen one come up over the bush at the back of the property exactly at the same time.
It sounds like the area that you're in is a kind of a little bit of a hotspot for Min lights.
Well, look, since I've been here since permanent since 2003, the activity, I hadn't seen anything on my particular property until 4 years ago. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, was 2016 was the first time I'd seen anything remotely like this at my property. So I don't know why all of a sudden in 2016, or is it just because I've started to notice more things? I don't know. But we definitely have seen, since 2016, it's definitely, we have at least a sighting every probably 3 to 4 months.
Oh, wow. That's really common.
Yeah, right. Like we'll see something like either come up from over the side of the bush and like it looks like it's coming from in the bush about 300-400 meters and sort of coming up and over the bush. And then over over the property or something like that, or it'll just appear in the sky, and there'll be a light there. So
you've seen them in the sky as well, there, Dan?
We've seen the orange ones. We had, yeah, definitely. So we had one night here. It was about 18 months ago. A friend of mine rings me up and says, "Oh, dude, you've got to get outside and have a look up in the sky. There was 8 orange orbs above you." We went outside and had a look up. We couldn't see it because of the bush right next to us. The bush is too high. It blocked our view, sort of thing. So we drove up the road a little bit to where it was a little bit higher, and we couldn't see anything. So we were sitting there just waiting a bit, and all of a sudden, bam! These 2 big red orbs appeared over the bush, sort of thing, near where we were. I'm like, wow, that's huge. And these things were up in the sky. These were high up. These weren't like low, like in the bush type, things that we'd seen dancing around. These were high up in the sky. And so we phoned our friend back and said, "Oh, yeah, we've seen him. And we were driving back to come into our property. And we're about 20 metres from the driveway, and my wife's just going, "Stop!" And I've hit the brakes. We're on a dirt road out in the middle of nowhere, sort of thing, so we're not going to impede any traffic, that's for sure. And she said, "Look, there they are." And we looked directly up, and there these I think there was 3 of them at that time, 3 big red orbs right up, pretty much directly above us. So yeah, that's one of the other sightings we've had.
Yeah, that's insane. Did you feel like you were threatened or anything by that?
No, not at all. Never once have I felt threatened by any of the things that we've seen here. It's always been more of a, "Oh, I'm glad I've seen it," feeling. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Another time we were here. Back in 2017, I had Tolek from the Andromeda Council come out and stay with us for a while. I'm not sure if you've heard of those guys or not. He's apparently a guy who's apparently represents the Andromeda Council in America, which is it's all spiritual type of stuff and whatnot. And we were putting on 2 conferences. We put one up in Tugan and one down here in Foster, and talking about different spirituality stuff and the Andromeda Council and what that does and all that type of thing. And we had another speaker out, Alexandra Meadows. She was staying with us for a little while from Galactic Connections. And she said in that morning, she said, "I want to contact. I'm not sure if you believe this or not, but Ashkar, and I want him to come over your house tonight and put on a show for us." And so she done a meditation and contacted, and apparently, yep, that's all good. So we sort of forgot about it. This was in the morning of the day, sort of thing. We've come home, we've had dinner, we're kicking back, sort of thing, watching a bit of telly, having a yak, talking, and I walked down from a shed that I have on the property, like a music shed. I play music, so there's all instruments and that in there. I was just mucking around in there. And as I've walked down to the house, for whatever reason, I've spun around, looked up above the shed, and here's this white orb flashing its head off at me. So I ran like for the next 10 minutes to the house, yelled out to all the people who were staying here, Alexandra from Galactic Connections and Tolek from the Andromeda Council. They've all come out, and Donna from Star Ancestry, and here were all of us, like all five of us, standing there watching this orb just flash at us over the bush and like right next to the property, sort of thing, and I would say about 100 metres in the air.
Oh wow! Okay,
it was quite amazing. Yeah, and we're all there clapping and laughing and cheering and whatnot. It was cool. It was really cool.
And what do you think that was? Do you think it's a spirit? Do you think it might be, I don't know if you believe in it, but UFOs or something like that, something otherworldly?
I honestly believe that whether Alexandra was right, and it was Ashtar, but the way this thing, it didn't move like the other orbs. It sort of looked mechanical as far as the way it moved. It didn't just appear. It come from when for whatever reason I turned around and I looked, it was moving up the property. And then when it went, it shot up sort of on a diagonal, sort of.
Okay, like it was leaving the atmosphere.
Yeah, it wasn't like like the orbs that we see that just all of a sudden there's a red orb in the sky, or there's a white orb coming up from the bush, and that didn't look anything like those. It was completely different.
Wow. Okay.
So I think, honestly, I do believe in UFOs, and I do believe that we'd be naive to think that we're the only civilization in the Milky Way, at least, that's for sure.
Yeah, mate, the universe is far too small for that.
Yeah, exactly. And we'd have to be pretty narcissistic to think that the whole universe centers around you,
Absolutely.
But anyway, that's getting off topic a little bit. But I definitely believe in UFOs, and I honestly believe that we are and have been in contact with beings for a long time.
Yeah. Now, what do you think these lights around your property are? Do you think they're Min lights? And what do you think a Min light would be?
Right. Well, as I said in the message, I actually went and spoke to an Aboriginal elder about this last week. I used to work in a previous lifetime for local government, and was in contact with a lot of local Aboriginal elders around the area for my role in local government. And so I developed a lot of friendships with the Aboriginal community, and I bumped into the person I used to work closely with at council, who is an Aboriginal elder, very knowledgeable in Dreamtime stories and the stories of the local area here. And I hadn't spoken to her for about 2.5 years, and I told her about what I've been seeing around here and I said, what is it? What am I seeing? And she said, oh, you're seeing the brown fairies. And I said, what do you mean? What are the brown fairies? She said, oh, they're all the Aboriginal spirits that come in and like protect the land around here and whatnot. And they're here to just watch over things, and they're watching. They're looking at you. They're watching you. Apparently, they were her words. They're watching you. They're making sure you're doing the right thing.
And how's that make you feel?
I find them. I don't find them bad at all. I actually really enjoy the experience. You know, I wish I had more experiences to tell you about. Tell you the truth, I've never felt like I've had like an ill intent from them. I've never had a bad negative feeling when I've seen them. It's always, as I said before, it's always been, oh wow, I'm glad I really seen that. I'm glad I seen what I saw, and I'm glad that my wife, she's seen stuff that I haven't seen too. She's seen three lights above the bush about 4 weeks ago. She was standing at the door and she said, "Oh, stars are out early. It's 5:30. Why are those three lights just above the bush there?" So, we never get both of us have seen them quite regularly, and we've never ever had a negative feeling from it. It's always been a positive feeling. And then when talking to I spoke to only last week, and she confirmed that they're the Aboriginal spirits and fairies that are there just protecting that area and this area. I feel quite calm and safe knowing that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic.
It's look, she did say to me, she said, where you live next door in the 880 hectares, there are a number of sacred sites in there. That she said, I can show you a couple of them. I can't show you all of them. I said, look, I personally, they're your sacred sites. I'm not an Aboriginal person, so I have no purpose to be there. You know what I mean? And I feel honoured that you want to show me, and I'd go, but I don't want to wreck that sacredness.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, it's an honour to even be given the opportunity to go there and have a look at that, and maybe find out a little bit more about that culture.
Look, absolutely. The more I can find out about Aboriginal culture, the better for me. I've literally in the last 6 months started to immerse myself in the Dreamtime stories and stuff like that, because they're just so fascinating. I really enjoy it.
And there seems to be quite a rich culture where you are as well, if you're encountering things like this and finding locals and local elders who can kind of give you a little bit more information about this.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm in between two Indigenous areas and two Aboriginal peoples areas here. So I'm on the border of the Warramai and the Biripi people. So I'm really lucky because I can talk to both peoples and get both perspectives too. So it's really cool.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing those experiences, because they are, when I say this, I really mean it. Those are absolutely, genuinely magical experiences that you're having on your property.
Oh, cheers, mate. I really appreciate the time that you've given me, mate, and I appreciate the outlet that you've got. It's really cool.
Oh, no worries, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Not a problem, Cade. Anytime, buddy.
And that's going to do it for tonight. And remember, if you have had an encounter, get in touch with me. My email address is believe@ccradio.com.au, or you can message me on Facebook, and that's facebook.com/Believe UFO Radio. Until next time, stay safe, and you've been listening to Believe Australian Paranormal and UFO Radio.